Let's start things off with a bang, literally, and go over a bunch of living things that explode. For the sake of this video, I'm going to establish some baselines for what counts as an exploding creature. 1. It has to be a creature that is or was alive at some point, and 2. It must have the ability to explode due to its own biological traits. So things like whale corpses exploding from the buildup of internal gases don't count, because that can literally happen with any corpse. Let's start off with something common and possibly familiar as a baseline. Many plants disperse their seeds through a method called volatile, which basically means their seeds are spread through explosions. Cardamine hirsuta, more commonly known as hairy bittercress, or my personal favorite name, shotweed, is a small plant that features a leaf-covered base which several budding stems grow out of, no more than about a foot tall each. Originally, shotweed was native to Europe and parts of North Africa, but it's become an invasive species present in much of the globe, including North America. Its seeds are stored in small pods called siliquae that jut out from the stems and explode if physically disturbed after reaching maturity. Shotweed has an interesting method of volatile that I like to call the reverse banana peel green bean snap bracelet on a cob, where two tensile membranes are stretched out into a pod around the seeds, which builds up tension until it violently bursts and rolls up like a green bean made out of snap bracelets, consequently flinging its seed over everything nearby. While we're on this note, I want to mention an interesting close relative of shotweed, Arabidopsis thaliana, or thalecress. Thalecress features an explosive siliquae very similar to that of shotweed, as well as having an important historical role as a model organism. Biologists took notice of the plant's relatively small genome, having about only 157 megabase pairs and 5 chromosomes, as useful for genetic mapping and sequencing, which led to it becoming the first plant genome to ever be fully sequenced. As far as plants go, doubling as a scientific model and a natural frag grenade isn't too shabby in my book. The next entry may stretch the definition of explode a little, but bear with me. Ecbolium, or the squirting cucumber, is pretty much what the name suggests. It's basically a hairy cucumber plant, but if you try and harvest the fruit, you may end up with a bunch of seeds and juice squirted in your face. And that's because when the bulb is touched, it propels itself by squirting out its insides like a water rocket, which comes out of the hole left behind where the stem was attached, with the power of said squirt reaching a pressure of up to 27 atmospheres. This ejection can also occur after the bulb reaches a high enough pressure. While this plant may look like a silly cucumber, don't be fooled by it. It's actually very poisonous. People in ancient history discovered it could be used as a purgative, meaning it helps you poop. In modern times, it was discovered that if you eat it or have the juice squirt up your nose, it might put you in the hospital, with symptoms ranging from edema to fluid swelling in your uvula, or even the cells in your nasal cavity suffering from necrosis and dying if ingested through the nose or mouth. This next plant, Impatiens nulli tangere, or touch-me-not balsam, is special not because it has unique explosive properties, but rather its relationship to another species, the netted carpet moth caterpillar. This may be stretching the rules of the list a bit, but I'm including it regardless because it's a pretty cool phenomenon and I made those rules up anyways. These caterpillars are an endangered species in the United Kingdom, and they survive solely off of eating touch-me-not balsam, especially the seed pods, which explode when touched. You might be wondering how it's possible to survive exclusively off of a food that explodes at the slightest touch. And the answer is, not very well. You assume that a species whose primary source of food is explosive would evolve to help deal with that problem, or at least develop some sort of method to reduce the risk of eating the pods. But that isn't what these caterpillars did. Instead, their solution to the problem was nothing. They just never tried to fix it. They simply try to eat the seed pods like nothing is wrong, often crawling well onto the explosive pods when feeding. And a lot of them blow up while trying to do so, which usually sends them flying into the air, often ending up injured or dead because of it. But there is a chance that the seed pods don't explode while being eaten, often if they aren't mature enough. And that's enough for the netted carpet moth caterpillar to continue surviving. Barely. You know, I think their feeding process might have had something to do with them nearly going extinct multiple times, and their habitat being reduced to about 10 square kilometers in total, and requiring conservationists to reintroduce them to the Drentwater site to keep them alive there. Twice. It goes to show you that sometimes, instead of adapting to challenges in your life, you can just do nothing and scrape by on the brink of oblivion. I think we could all take a page from this little guy's philosophy on approaching life's problems. and someday maybe we can achieve their level of blissful ignorance. For the final plant of this video, we're going to look at what might be considered the most murderous stationary life form in existence, Heracrepitans, nicknamed the dynamite tree. The dynamite tree is the plant that answered yes when asked by God what weapons it wanted to have. The tree can grow up to about 200 feet tall and has large ovate leaves. It looks a lot like a normal tree until you realize it's covered in large spikes from head to toe. It was also given the name monkey no climb because of its spikes. You have to admit, they get right to the point and you can't argue against it. If you try to climb one of these things, you're going to end up with a bunch of cuts and a mean rash. Why a rash, you may ask? Because of the poison the tree secretes. Oh, did I forget to mention it secretes poisonous sap as well? Because it also does that. The spikes that come out of the tree excrete a thick red poisonous sap that can give you what's been described as an angry red rash on contact, as well as causing vomiting, diarrhea, and cramps if ingested. And it can temporarily blind you if it gets in your eyes. It was so dangerous that the indigenous Caribs people of the Caribbean made poison arrows out of it. Wait, hold on a second. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Right, this is a video about things that explode. Don't you worry, the dynamite tree has that covered too, because of course it does. The fruits of this tree grow into pumpkin-shaped capsules made out of flattened seeds. They kinda look like those chocolate oranges you can buy at the store. But biting into one of these seed pods isn't going to satisfy your sweet tooth, only the conditions necessary to activate your health insurance. Because these fruits can explode and send their seeds flying up to 150 miles per hour in all directions, potentially injuring any people or animals nearby. Fortunately, the seeds usually only explode on their own during the daytime when it's dry, so at least there will be some indication of when you're pelted by seed shrapnel. So to recap, it's a tree covered in spikes that secrete deadly poison and grows fruit that explode like frag grenades. Basically, you don't want to bully this tree as a sapling. Okay, now we finally move on to something that isn't a plant, with all the special abilities of moving around and thinking and such. Introducing Colobopsis saundersii, or the Malaysian exploding ant. As the name suggests, this ant has the ability to explode as a defense mechanism. In the event that these ants are attacked by predators or other ant colonies looking for territory, they'll raise their abdomens into the air as a warning. And if that doesn't work, they latch onto their attackers and hold them in place. Then they contract their abdominal muscles and rupture their mandibular glands, which are two long glands that run the entire length of its body. Upon rupturing, a sticky, corrosive white to yellow glue-like substance explodes out of the front of the ant's head, and covers everything in front of the ant in the stuff, potentially immobilizing anything caught in the brain blast. Becoming a one-way bomb delivery drone may seem a bit extreme to most of us, but that kind of stuff is pretty normal for ants. It isn't uncommon for a select few ants to take lethal jobs like staying behind to cover up the entrance to an ant's den to protect it from predators and biting it to said predators by next morning, or wandering off far away from a nest to die alone if suspected of having a dangerous disease like a cordyceps infection. Ants are hardcore creatures hell-bent on world domination. They'll do anything to get an edge over their enemies. And if we didn't conquer the world first, they probably would have at some point. For the final creature of this video, I was thinking of putting exploding toads here, because that did become a thing in some places. But this was only because crows made a habit out of punching holes in toads to steal their livers, which left behind an opening that caused toads to rupture when they puffed up. And as fun as the idea of crows robbing toads for their organs to sell in the black market is, that would be breaking the rules of this video, because it's only something that happens after being influenced by an outside source, and not as an intentional part of the toad's biology. So I wouldn't really count it as an exploding creature, though I did think it was worth mentioning. Instead, I decided that the most hardcore thing to finish off this video with should be the Neocapritermes terracua termite. I couldn't find a nickname for these guys, so I'm giving them the nickname elder abuse termite. Why? Because they commit war crimes, of course, particularly by forcing the elderly to sacrifice themselves for the colony in self-destructive acts. And what's more hardcore than that? As these termites age, they begin to develop more and more of a toxic blue substance on their backs. When threatened, these termites rupture their exoskeletons and spew out the substance, which is deadly enough to paralyze or even kill other bugs. The reason that older termites have more of this toxic substance in them than younger ones is because as they grow older, their usefulness to the colony diminishes along with their ability to work. Like with old people, these termites accounted for this inefficiency by turning their old workers into self-destructive bombers, simultaneously making the elderly useful again and eliminating the need for a social security tax. Who needs workers' rights when you can have workers' war crimes? Not these termites, that's for sure. That's all there is for this video, folks. Have a good one and see you next time.